Third and final hour of the show. It's Overdrive on TSN 1050. The TSN app are now up on TSN2. Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes alongside Frankie Corrado and Dave Feschuk. We're a half an hour away from the pregame show between the Leafs and Devils over on TSN4. And the reason, if you're just joining us, that we're sitting here, not the regulars, the A-team. They're a couple hundred meters that way in Studio 6 with James Duffy for tonight's game. So a much anticipated Leafs-Devils game as they try to snap out of their mini 2-game losing streak. They haven't lost 3 games in a row in regulation so far this year, which is a testament to the season that they've had. So they'll try to avoid that. And we'll get more into the NHL with Carter Hutton at 6:30. But Steve Phillips will be joining us in a couple of minutes. And before the break, we teased Max Fried, one of the big free agents, signing a deal with the New York Yankees. 8 years, $218 million, which everything now sounds so minuscule.
Yeah.
It's not like 750, 760. You got to have a suite involved. This security guy didn't let your family in.
Yeah. Max, how's Max Fried going
to one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah.
And the record the record contract that the Blue Jays have ever handed out is George Springer at 150,
right?
I believe, which is like it pales. Like it's not even like that's not even the taxes on.
It's crazy too because now the Jays have kind of been authorized, have they not? Like they've been authorized to spend $700 million on a deal. It's just
on those two players.
Yeah,
that's the frustrating part.
Sure.
Is it sounds like if it's Ohtani or Soto, sure, it's a blank check, but because the instinct is okay, use that money on like 3 other good players, and it apparently doesn't work that way.
Well, it didn't last summer.
No.
Where the Jays were out on Ohtani after, the great charter plane tracking moment in Toronto sports
They didn't even get the Dragon's Den guy signed.
Didn't sign him, and they really didn't sign anybody of, game-changing talent in the wake of allegedly being in on Ohtani to the tune of $700 million or $600 million, whatever it was. And so, you wonder, where this goes. I think it's one thing to sign the free agent of the moment. And I think that comes with more than just baseball value. That comes with, reputational value for a sports owner, let's face it, in Edward Rogers, who's about to become the czar of Toronto sports.
Yeah.
Right? When Larry Tannenbaum exits the stage with the sale, that's gone on. So, he's got that ownership group with the Blue Jays has a reason to make a statement, but does it have a reason to spend that $700 million that would have been the statement on a bunch of other players that add up to $700 million?
Santander.
It's not the same. It's not the same statement, though.
Yeah.
You know what I wonder? Like, I've never been in these kind of meetings, obviously, right? Like, just very grateful to get to the level I got to. But if you're in one of these kinds of meetings, everyone's got the pitch, right? The money's going to be there. Like, that's pretty standard across the board, give or take a little bit. But the pitch, as far as who's talking to you, what they're telling you, what they're selling you, and how does that make you feel? I wonder where the Jays would be in that power rankings. Where if it's like you're talking to Cohen and the Mets, and you're talking to the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Jays and, whoever else is going to be mixed in there, like the messaging from the Jays, how do you feel leaving that meeting compared to the meeting where you're talking to the other teams? Like, the money's always going to be there if you're in that ballpark, or else you wouldn't be in those conversations. But that's what I wonder, like, do you leave that meeting convinced that there's something going on that you have to be a part of? That, like, did they really get in there and win you over? Did they make a personal connection that you feel like, man, I'm meant to be there? And it's easier said than done, and maybe it's just me, like, fantasizing over what it would be like, but that's kind of what I wonder when I hear Atkins and Shapiro talk, and then think about, okay, what would that meeting look like with those guys? What's the personal touch that those guys will provide that is going to make the athlete say, man, I got to be a part of what those guys are doing there?
Well, the only way it would actually be positive for Blue Jays fans is if they were much better at the negotiating table than they are at the media microphone. Right. Because they're not connecting with people at the media microphone.
Not fans.
No,
they're not. They don't. I mean, that's been a struggle here for sure. And I think if you contrast it with Anthopoulos, who the fans really liked, and like, let's not make no mistake about it. Anthopoulos not every move was perfect for Anthopoulos. Like, there were plenty of blunders along the way, but I think he always was just authentically himself and came out and didn't do like the corporate speak and connected to fans. And when the time was right, he said, we're doing this and we're going all in. And people appreciated that because he tried his best to make this team as relevant as possible.
Yeah, and he seized opportunities. And he saw one in 2013, and it didn't work with Jose Reyes and Josh Johnson and R.A. Dickey. But then a couple of years later, it's David Price and Troy Tulowitzki. And, and that team was as close as they've ever been to winning a World Series since the early 90s. We do have some breaking news when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays. According to Jeff Passan, they are working on a trade to acquire Andrés Giménez from the Cleveland Guardians, the 3-time Gold Glove winner who plays second base, hit .252 last year with 9 home runs and 63 RBIs. But the glove is the big thing where he's won the Gold Glove the last 3 years. His best offensive year was 2 years ago when he almost hit 300. But there is a position that they have been kind of all over the place trying to essentially putting a Band-Aid on. So that solidifies that position, certainly defensively. And if you're a Blue Jays fan, you're saying, great, let's hope that this is the start for a few of them. But
well, they've been all about run prevention.
Yeah.
How they're going to actually do run production is the question.
Yeah. Let's get some reaction on this trade that is being reported by Jeff Passan from our baseball insider, Steve Phillips, who now joins us. Steve, great timing on your part. It's like you saw all of this happening. I was first going to lead with Max Fried, but let's put that off to the side for a moment because it appears the Toronto Blue Jays just got a whole lot better at the second base position, especially defensively, when Andrés Giménez, it looks like, is coming to Toronto from Cleveland. What's your first reactions to this deal?
Well, I tell you what, I don't know what they're giving up in return with it yet, but Giménez is a tremendous player. I love him. He's a Platinum Glove winner, an outstanding defender, and he's a guy that has shown the ability to put the ball in play and make productive outs when he does make outs and to get on base, and he has some speed, and so it's a really nice pickup for the Blue Jays. As you guys are just informing me about it, I just got off the air of doing some interviews, so that is a good pickup. Really good pickup for the Toronto Blue Jays. I was wondering what they were going to do at second base and third base. I think this is fantastic. He's a great defender. I think on that side of the infield with Vlad Jr. at first base really covers Vladdy a little bit with maybe the range not being – Vladdy catches everything he gets to, but the range factor is not necessarily a strength, and so Giménez really benefits the Jays in that way.
How much would you like the fact that he's under contract until 2029 with a club option for 2030?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, right? I mean, to be able to get that cost certainty, having him under contract, having that controllability, and allows you to sort of plan around that. Now, he's not going to break the bank either, which is the other thing, right? He's not a big-time, massive contract financially, so it's going to give them flexibility to maybe sign the bigger contract. Now, whether that's going to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or not remains to be seen, but it also is a statement about continuing looking to win, right? You have a guy like this under control for 5 years. It is a statement that you expect to be a winning team over the next 5 years. Now, certainly he's a talent. He could be traded, but I think it's a statement that this is not just, Vladdy and Bo for this year, and then they're going to go in a different direction. This is a commitment, another statement of commitment to winning for the long term.
Well, no doubt about it, Steve. I mean, defensively, this team is, strive to prevent runs, and they've done an awfully good job of it, and this only, takes them further in that direction. But as for producing runs, that's been a problem, and it's no secret. We all know that. Soto would have been, a great solution. Where do you see them going in the wake of the Soto news as you kind of get deeper into free agency here and things shake out? There are other competitors in the market looking for a lot of the same things they're looking for. How do you think they might approach this beyond today?
Well, I will tell you that, the Yankees losing out on Soto may be the worst thing that could happen for everybody because now the pivot to Max Fried to go to 8 years and $218 million is an extraordinary contract where I think most everybody thought now we get 5 years, Fried 6 years, and Corbin Burns 7. The starting pitching market is just exploded. right now. And so, we know the Jays were dabbling on the Burns and Fried category. This price point is significant, but the Yankees looked at it and thought, we didn't get Soto. We now got to be aggressive to improve our team, and this is a major statement. And so, whether it's Anthony Santander, which is a guy I think could be a nice fit for the Blue Jays, whether it could potentially be Pete Alonso at first base or Alex Bregman, who I think would be a great fit for the Blue Jays at third base. I think the Yankees are going all in, and so I think the prices for even the other non-Soto players are all sort of going to ride the wave to cost a little bit more.
I was wondering what your opinion was on the fallout in New York and specifically with the Yankees. Without getting Juan Soto, not only do they miss out on getting him like the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, but it's also a subtraction to their lineup and a very big one. So there's that part of it, but also how much does it affect the mystique of being a New York Yankee when they're offering over $700 million and they still can't land a big player like him?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a statement for sure that in New York, the Mets are now the Yankees and the Yankees are now the Mets. I mean, the reality is that Steve Cohen is the new George Steinbrenner in New York. Now, I will say that Hal Steinbrenner's not going to lay down and go away. But there's nothing to be ashamed of when you offer $760 million and the guy takes $765. I mean, they went way out there beyond any comfort level for any owner on that offer. But I think it's a statement. It's probably more about the Mets than it is about the Yankees because the Yankees are still going to be major players. But this showdown, this was something that never happened. When I was Mets general manager, there was always an understanding. We didn't go after their free agents. They didn't go after ours. Nobody said it, but you understood what the ramification could be. And this is it. That the two guys stood there toe-to-toe. And these were owners just saying, all right, they raising their paddle at an auction trying to outdo the other. And now, look, they're both going to be in on Pete Alonso. And they could show down again on that one. And the reality is there will always be one more Met dollar than Yankee dollar. And so if Steve Cohen wants them, he's going to get it. I mean, look, Steve Cohen has a $92 million sterling silver rabbit on his front lawn, right? Like, why is it worth $92 million? And why would you buy it? And he bought it because he wanted it. And you know what? Juan Soto became a piece of art. And he wanted it, and the price was whatever he thought he was willing to pay for it. There wasn't a value determined in the market. He just said, I want it. I'm going to keep going until I get it. And that's the thing owners have been worried about. When he first came in, that's what they were worried about. And in New York, this didn't happen. No, they never would show down against each other because all they would do is run the price up, and Steve Cohen doesn't care. I did the math on it. $750 million to somebody with $18 billion is the same as $4,166 to somebody with $100,000.
Wow.
That's wild.
Let that sink in.
Must be
it's
nice.
Nothing. It's a spit in the ocean.
Where is this going to leave Vladdy in the grand scheme of things? Because you bring up Steve Cohen, and it feels like, okay, the price has obviously gone up for a player like Juan Soto. Now we know what that is. Like, is there going to be a big market of people that are still trying to push that price up for a guy like Vladdy? Or is it safe to say that, like, it's still attainable for the Blue Jays when it comes to, is Vladdy going to test the market and how high is that number going to be?
Yeah, so I think the price has gone up from what it might have been in November to where it is right now. I think but I think most everybody looks at Soto as a bit of a standalone, like Ohtani was. Like, this was the perfect storm, the two Mets owners going at it, and so it ran the price up on Soto. He played for the Yankees, and so the Mets were going to steal him away. So there's, but I will say that, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to look at it and say, well, I'm at least half as good as Juan Soto. So half of 765 is going to get me, $380 million. So I'm at least half as good as he is. And so, look, they'll use the argument for sure. But, it will come down to how much does Vladdy want to stay in Toronto? And I've actually heard that if he had his druthers, he would want to stay. Now, he doesn't want to do it for less, but he wants to stay. But the other factor in all of this right now is, they just told him that we want Soto over you because they didn't offer any of that money to Vladdy. And Soto, they said he's our preference because they weren't going to be able to afford both of them. And so I don't know whether that is, how Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will feel about that, right? I wasn't their first choice. They would have preferred the other guy, and now they're coming to me wanting to extend me. Now, for the right amount of money, you put those things aside, but you wonder if there is some emotional impact on that pursuit as well.
Here's our baseball insider, Steve Phillips. If you're just joining us, the breaking news is Andrés Giménez has been traded to the Blue Jays pending a physical. Still don't know what it costs the Blue Jays to acquire the second baseman who's won a Gold Glove the last 3 seasons. Going back to one of the big players who's already here, Steve, and understandably, we're not talking as much about Bo Bichette as we are about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but from in a GM's position, how difficult is it to have those discussions when it comes to a contract extension when he's coming off of the year that he has?
Yeah, well, I think one of the big challenges all along for both Bichette and Guerrero has been they've had some peaks and valleys. And so when they've had the down years, the players don't want to talk about the extension. They want to wait till they have a good year, and then they want to negotiate. From the club side, there's not really a benefit when the guy's had his best season to negotiate. That being said, you don't have a choice right now because they go to free agency if you don't sign them right now. And so I think that you've got to find some common ground. I don't see a way that they make a deal with Bichette right now. I think he's got to play because he wants to have a bounce-back season and then say, this is who I am. I want you to pay me for this. Now, what Giménez does, though, is he protects them at shortstop. He is a guy that was originally a shortstop. He can still play shortstop. And so by getting him as a Gold Glove second baseman for right now, it does protect them moving forward that if they don't sign Bichette, you could always consider moving Giménez to short and then going out and finding another second baseman.
Hey, Steve, you've been in these negotiating situations many times. I always love your stories about negotiating with A-Rod when he would ask for extras, and you had to sort of draw the line there on like merchandising tables and all those things. What did you make of the detail about Soto getting a suite thrown into his deal with the Mets where the Yankees said, no, we can't do a suite because we made Judge and Jeter pay for theirs?
Yeah, I think that I used to I gave suites out back when I was a GM 24 years ago here in Dallas was when Alex Rodriguez signed with the Texas Rangers. It's been 24 years, and it was at that press conference when he said he hopes he and 24 of his Texas Ranger teammates run into me in a dark alley somewhere. And so and he never talked to me after that. Again, Alex Rodriguez never talked to me. I think that those extra perks, you can say no to them, but that would not be a reason. I would not let that be the reason I didn't get a star player. Now, there were also some other reports that there was a Yankee security guard who didn't let a family member for Soto and his driver come into a certain area, that they kicked him out of the stadium. And then another one where I think his mom and the driver were there, and he also sent them outside in the rain. Same security guard. Now, I'm not sure that's best for the job security for the security guard, but I think that because George Steinbrenner, remember, he would fire the parking lot attendants. He would go out there, and there were times he was in charge of the parking lot. Steinbrenner himself would fire the parking lot attendants, and he would guide the cars in the parking lot. So, the security people, there's some crazy stories from back then. But I think ultimately, for Soto, there were a number of things why, and what the Mets did is the Mets pulled their traveling secretary in, they pulled their security people in, they explained what they do to take care of families and everything else because they knew that had happened with the Yankees and it bothered them. And it was one of the things that clinched the deal for Soto to go to the Mets.
Steve, are you surprised that the Jays are bringing back Jimmy Garcia on a 2-year deal?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I think he was nails for them last year, and they need to rebuild that bullpen. So he's a guy can pitch in Toronto. You know his mentality, his makeup, his character. You know he's a good teammate. You know his durability. You know his bounce-back ability. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to me. And the fact they only got him on a 2-year deal, I think, is even better.
Steve, when we hear anything about the Blue Jays adding a second baseman, we think of the name Elvis Martinez, who could have been the heir apparent to that position. Of course, his season was marred by a suspension for a positive test for a PED. He could be part of this trade for all we know, so we're reacting kind of minute by minute here. But what if he is still a Blue Jay in the next couple hours, what does today's move mean for his future?
Well, it could be that he shifts over to third base, because I think that's something else they've got to figure out what they're going to do at third base. I like Ernie Clement, but I don't see him as an everyday third baseman. And Snyder's not an everyday third baseman. Horowitz is not an everyday second baseman or third baseman. And so I think that Aurelvis Martinez could make that move to third. Their thought was he's going to develop into a big power bat. Maybe they give him a crack at that opportunity there. But, he's going to have to earn his way back into it. And so, one of the things about, the winter meetings and the off season is that it's fluid, right? We never want to evaluate things just on a snapshot alone, because there's always something else. There's, this move sets up another move, And so I do think it's good to get off the schneid a little bit and do something if you're the Blue Jays to get some action, some movement, to start to fill some of those holes. And I think we're going to start to see some other things unravel here at the meetings as well over the next 24 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe the next 6 hours you might be pretty busy in Dallas there, as things are starting to move pretty quickly. Great to have you on any day, but especially when we have news breaking like we do. So thanks for doing that, Steve, and all the best throughout the offseason.
All right, terrific. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
There you have it, our baseball insider, Steve Phillips, as the Blue Jays continuing to prevent runs with this pickup.
And not really helping the thing about scoring those runs that you're, when you're preventing them is great, but you got to get a couple.
Yeah, 2 years ago, close to a 300 hitter. If you took that slash line and you promised that you're going to get that moving forward, then this is a great deal. But this obviously you're getting a 250 hitter for the last couple of years, and you're getting someone obviously that's ideally a great glove and at the bottom of your order.
Yeah.
They have a lot of bottom of the order hitters at the moment.
That no one's going to be bothered by another good defensive player. Like if you're bringing in someone in the infield who's a really good defensive player, which he is, no one's going to be bothered by that as long as you bring in some offense. Yeah. Like that just can't be the move where it's like, this is what we did because this is what we believe in.
You can't end here.
Right. There has to be more to it. There had to be more to it last year, and there wasn't. This year, there absolutely has to be more to it because no one has a problem with good defensive players, but this team needs offense. And that's not just going to happen because guys did it from, internal improvement. I hate that I said that. I hate that I said internal improvement.
Well,
oh, well.
It's the word, it's the
Such
phrase
a buzzword.
That Ross
took 2 hours and 23 minutes, buddy.
We did it, though. We almost got there.
Like these guys, the way they speak to people through the media, you might hear that again because it doesn't feel like they're particularly self-aware. They don't seem self-aware about the way they're being perceived within the marketplace because they keep putting their foot in their mouth and they don't seem to really know how to stop doing it.
But if they do go out there and they bring in someone who adds offense to this group, at least you kind of know like they're paying attention.
Oh yeah,
like they're paying attention internally, and maybe through that they're paying attention externally because that's what the market craves right now.
Paying attention to the fact they were last place last year.
Yeah, that should catch their attention.
Might have crossed their desk.
Yeah. Interesting that the reaction when it comes to Max Fried is that's a great number 2 behind Garrett Cole, but also how the Yankees probably overpaid for him at $218 million.
Largest guarantee to a left-handed pitcher in the history of the sport.
Right. It's
seems like a lot of money.
It seems like the Juan Soto situation maybe motivated them.
The Juan Soto revenge contract.
Yes, that's right.
Like, we didn't get him, but we're going to spend a lot of money on getting some other guys.
Yeah, he can always tell his grandkids, thanks to Juan Soto, I made $218 million from the Yankees.
But, Max, don't ask for a suite. We'll give you $218.
If Jeter's not getting a suite, you're not getting a suite, Max.
That's right.
We are under an hour away from game time between the Leafs and the Devils, which you can see on TSN 4. The pregame show is going to begin in a couple of minutes with Hayes, O-Dog, Noodles, and James Duffy. Carter Hutton is going to join us after the break. We'll get his thoughts on both this Leafs team and also what's going on around the National Hockey League, including the Ottawa Senators and Brady Tkachuk reacting to the rumors that the New York Rangers are trying to acquire him. So all of that and much more as OverDrive continues on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and up on TSN 2. OverDrive continuing on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and on TSN 2. Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes today alongside Frankie Corrado and Dave Feschuk. We are we're now underway with the pregame show over on TSN 4 with the Leafs taking on the Devils, and that is where you'll find Hayes, O-Dog, and Noodles alongside James Duthie as the Maple Leafs try to break out of this mini 2-game losing streak that they suffered over the weekend against a Devils team that's also coming off a 4-0 loss to the Avalanche, and it was the second game of the season that the Maple Leafs beat the Devils, which seems like a long time ago, but this will be the second game that they face Sheldon Keefe. Carter Hutton's going to join us in a couple of moments to preview that, but this is a battle between two, looks like playoff-bound teams in the Eastern Conference, and a good test for the Maple Leafs, and a good opportunity for them to kind of get back on track and get a win against a really quality team. And
just to find some depth scoring, right? Like Matthews has to get on the board for sure. But other guys like Domi's coming back. He hasn't scored. Pacioretty's got to be a guy that scores for you. Like that's probably the biggest thing we'll look for tonight. I don't have any doubt that Matthews is going to find his game, but if they can find a little something, that's going to be much needed for this group.
Yeah, I think Craig Berube has been essentially begging for it publicly, and like this is what we need. We need that just hasn't been coming from that bottom six. He's also mentioned the fact they haven't been getting any real offense from the D, but that's sort of a back burner.
That's
issue.
A secondary. I feel like if that's almost nitpicking.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Right? And think about where we are with the Leafs. Like goaltending has been so good for this group. Like we haven't talked about goaltending at all. Maybe
not a word.
Like maybe the last time we talked about goaltending was when Wall was hurt and we weren't sure what we were going to get, and he's come back and played really well. The Pittsburgh game wasn't his best night, but I mean, that's just, we don't talk about it anymore.
No. Well, we'll talk about it right now. Anthony Stolarz gets the start tonight, he grew up a couple hours just south of Newark, so I'm sure he has a lot of friends and family in the building. And someone who can speak about that position is joining us now. Carter Hutton, former NHLer, broadcaster for Daily Faceoff and also SiriusXM, and the pride of Thunder Bay. How are you, Carter?
I don't know about the pride of Thunder Bay. Right now, Mackenzie Blackwood is the biggest guy from Thunder Bay. That's big news for us. It was his birthday yesterday. He got traded, went to the Avalanche over San Jose. It's a big move. So things are looking good for the goalie community in Thunder Bay.
That's a nice upgrade.
How much better is Colorado with Mackenzie Blackwood? He's had a good year. Like, it feels like it's a resurgence for him, and like anything was going to be better than Georgiev.
Yeah, honestly, it's an immense upgrade. He is a guy that even in my playing days when I was, at the peak of my career getting starter minutes, he was so talented and gifted, and his skill set is amazing. I mean, he was coming out of junior, and I couldn't hold a candle to what he could do on the rink, but it was a matter of him just figuring out how to play and just manage expectations. And I think his other thing is this maturity of being a goalie, right? He just turned 28 years old. There, you see guys as they get a little bit older, but this is going to make this Colorado Avalanche team very dangerous. And at his size, he's 6'4", 225 they weigh him in at, but it might be a little heavier than that. This is a big boy that fills a lot of net, and he makes up for his athletic ability. So this is a huge move, I think, for the Avalanche mid-season to add him and Scott Wedgwood.
So speaking of Western Conference goaltending, Carter, a big, long-awaited return of Thatcher Demko with the Canucks expected tonight. I mean, talk about long-awaited. We thought he was returning a while back, and it's taken a while for him to go from backup to starter. But what do you make of the fact it's taken this long, and what do you expect we will get from Mr. Demko going forward?
Honestly, I think we'll get a goalie that's ready to go, right? I think this is another situation I think we've seen it with the Leafs, right? With Matthews out, and they took their time with him because they were winning, right? And I think it was a similar situation with Kevin Lankinen came in there. A guy who didn't even have a job, he came in and played so well for them, and he's kept them above. I think if we looked at this team right now and you said where they're sitting third in the division without Thatcher Demko, they would be amazed by that, right? And he's played so well, especially with Arthur Sheloff's not, really getting the job done as his first real crack at being a full-time NHL guy. So for Thatcher Demko coming off a season where he's nominated for the Vezina, 9-18, I think he's going to be ready to go. Truthfully, I think they took their time with him because they know down the stretch they're going to need him. And I think this is going to be a huge boost for this hockey club.
Carter, I know you can talk about other positions than goaltending, but I do want to ask you about Anthony Stolarz, who gets the start tonight for the Leafs as they take on the Devils. And we saw him play really well in a backup role for the Stanley Cup champs last year. In this kind of 1A, 1B situation that he's in with Toronto, did you expect him to put up the numbers that he has so far this year?
No, I can't say I totally expected it. I think he was in a really good situation in Florida where he's played under certain circumstances. I think it goes to credit Toronto in the way they defend, as well as Stolarz. He's been in a situation, I think, similar to my career early in it, where when I was with Pekka Rinne for a lot of years, I could look at a schedule and see every 2 weeks when I was going to start. And that was kind of the situation he had in Florida with Bobrovsky. But now coming in, and with that early injury, he was ready to take that step forward. And I believe it's also a reason why he wanted to be in Toronto, right? Like, he wanted a chance to throw his hat in the ring. Similar to me when I went to Buffalo. Yes, I didn't fare as well as Anthony Stolarz is doing in Toronto right now. But I think for him, he's ready mentally, physically to take on more games. And now with this 1A, 1B, with Woll coming back and playing very well, the Leafs are in a great situation. And I kind of heard when I first came on there, you guys were chatting about it. It's something we don't talk about anymore. We don't see a ton of bad goals. Yes, they've lost a few, but when we watch Samsonov play and over the years, certain players and goalies, it's almost like we were waiting each game for a bad goal to go in. And I think that's off the table now. And I think confidence throughout the fan base, throughout the media, throughout even the team in general is spread through these two goalies and how well they've played.
I got a, Leaf question for you. Last night, I'm watching Buffalo and Detroit. Husso goes in net. And the kid, Sebastian Cossa, who's, big, young, talented goaltender for Detroit, he's called up and he's not playing. And Husso's been bad all year long. But you don't put Cossa in to start the game, but you end up pulling Husso, and then you put this kid in the game in the second period. So now he's coming in cold. He hasn't had a warm-up. It's like, could you have put that guy in a worse position to make his NHL debut? And then the kid goes out and he wins the game in a shootout. Like, I'm just trying to think, if, you're a goalie, you see that situation go down, like, how do you think that was handled?
I think horribly, Frank. I think you nailed it on the head there. It's one of those ones where we don't want to start him because he's not ready, right? We don't want to rush him in, but we're going to throw him into a situation where you're kind of feeding him to the wolves, right? And I understand maybe if it's a veteran guy, you put him in a tough situation where we've seen it many times where the starter's getting a night off, and no matter how bad the backup is doing, whatever's going on, you're in there the full game, right? This guy's getting his rest. But a situation like this doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I respect the kid for going in and battling and finding a way to win. Yeah. On the other side of that, I feel for Buffalo, because those are a couple tough losses where they've had the lead against Colorado and against Detroit, and a point, where they need to get 2 points in that situation. But for Cossa, I look forward to him getting some more games. I feel like at times we really want to protect goalies, right? We want to keep them in the American League. We don't want to show them. But with Talbot out, with Laine out, this is a chance for him to really run, because I think Husso's he's played to the end of his leash here. He can't really seem to get it done lately.
Carter, you played in Nashville for a few seasons during your illustrious career. I'm sure you, like a lot of people that watch that franchise, were excited about the offseason. A lot of people thought maybe Barry Trotz had won the offseason, certainly made a lot of noise in the offseason. What is your level of surprise to look at the NHL standings today and see them in dead last place?
Yeah, it stings, honestly, because it's a team I pull for, right? A market that really gave me my first chance, right? Barry Trotz was the head coach when I came in, so I think it just goes to show you how important building a team is versus building just like an all-star. Like, yes, best available player may be out there and you want to add those pieces because you think it's going to, help your team. But at the end of the day, I think in a league like this, I know O-Dog, I listen a lot, and he talks about how watered down the league is, right? Where it just shows you when you need to get depth players, you need to find the right chemistry to make it work. And I think this is a great example of that, because you look at UC Stolarz, he's played very good this year, statistically speaking. They've added some pieces there, and they don't have guys that, fit with each other. And again, I think going to this Four Nations Cup, it's a great example of seeing what teams can gel quickly is usually produce the best winner.
Carter Hutton joining us on OverDrive. We are just about 20 minutes away from the Leafs and Devils over on TSN 4 tonight. The line rushes right now as they partake in their warm-ups. Max Domi on the third line with Fraser Minton and Steven Lorenz. As this team has struggled recently for secondary scoring, how big is it that Max Domi gets back into the lineup?
Oh, it's huge, right? Max is he's a guy that doesn't necessarily score a lot of goals. I think at times he could shoot the puck a lot more, but he's a playmaker. He generates, and every night if he isn't doing that, he is creating, with his feet. He's moving his feet, creating offense. So I think how well the Leafs have done, you look at all these injuries, I think just as a fan and on the other side of the media now, you want to see what they can do as they start putting pieces back into play here, right? Where's their depth? What are they going to need here? And then who's going to be the odd man looking out, right? There's obviously that question mark, but I think having Max Domi back, healthy, ready to go, is really going to help this hockey team down the stretch.
I'm sure you've been seeing what Patrik Laine has done in Montreal, 3 goals in his first 4 games there, and 3 power play goals, and just beating goaltenders clean. like one-on-one wrist shot right past you. First of all, is it nice to see a guy like that back and having success? And maybe like what makes Patrik Laine's shot so good?
You know, Frankie, you've seen it firsthand, right? You had to block these things too. At least I had the gear on to do it. But honestly, there's certain players that just have a different release, and he is one of them. Remember, I played a lot against him in the Central Division when I was with Nashville and St. Louis, and it's almost like it's a bit of a riser, right? He just snaps it off, and the deception in his blade and the whip in his stick is the hardest part about it. I always try to explain that to, I guess, non-goalies, right? It's not necessarily about how hard you can shoot it. It's how deceptive you can be in the whip of the stick. And Laine was one of those first guys that really came up, younger guy with a super whippy stick. So it may look like it's going glove and it goes blocker. And on top of that, it is such a powerful shot. So it's been impressive what he can do. And I felt for Dostal last night because I fell victim to that many times in that Central Division matchup.
Hey, Carter, we've been talking a lot about the secondary scoring. Frank, you brought up with the Leafs that's not coming. But if you break down the numbers, a lot of what's kind of lacking in their offensive production comes from Auston Matthews, the guy that scored 69 last year, on pace for 32 this year. You talk about people whose shot looks a little different. At his best, he's elite with that wrister. What have you seen from him that kind of leads you to believe there's something different this year, certainly in the production?
No, I think he's just a guy that's, obviously a little bit of setback being injured, right? But he is a guy that, again, is so deceptive. Even for me playing against him when I was in Buffalo, getting him a lot of those more matchups in the Atlantic Division. When he adds in his 5-hole shot when they come off the flank, it is something that it's very hard to read, right? And now the problem is with him is the fact that he can create space anywhere. He can beat you so many different ways. But I also think he's in a situation now where I think the team is buying into just general overall defense, right? Where we're not seeing that same Toronto Maple Leafs team wow you every night. I was able to go to the game. I brought my son down to Toronto. We went and watched the Hawks play. And it just feels like they play a better brand of hockey now, where they just seem like a team that has that winning pedigree. Late in that game, the Hawks could barely get the puck over the blue line, let alone into the offensive zone. I think that is because Auston Matthews and their leaders have all bought into winning. And I think they've understood the fact that, yes, we can wow during the regular season, but if we want to win in the playoffs, we need to buy in here. And I think that's what you have now in the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It's interesting because, you'll talk to people around New Jersey and they love what Sheldon Keefe brings. And then you talk to people around Toronto and they love what Craig Berube brings to this team. Like, it's crazy. I don't know how to explain it, but like Sheldon Keefe was what the Devils needed. Berube was what the Leafs needed. And now everyone's happy and both these teams are going to go head to head. Leafs are playing a different style of game than the Devils, but the Devils don't care because they like that style of game that Keefe is bringing. Like, I don't know. How do you explain that whole dynamic?
I know, it's weird. It's like the divorced couple that get new partners and they're all like 4 friends. They go for dinner and they get along really well. Weird. So it seems like, it honestly seems that way, right? It was just the right fit at the right time. And I also think there was those additions to the team. Like I heard Sheldon Keefe today. He was on Leafs Morning Take on a podcast talking about just some of the addition that Fitzy made, getting the goaltending, shoring up that on the D side, which was super important for this team, for a young team where at times you could see Jack Hughes being frustrated last year, like openly on the mic, like we need to save. And I don't think that's great for a young player to see that and also be dealing with that emotionally in the media. So I also think Chief coming in now, he's a little bit hard-nosed, right? I played for him in St. Louis, but he's a guy that he's going to reward you if you play the right way. And I think now you have everyone buying into that. And it's fun to see. It feels different. I hate saying that because I feel like we do this every year, but it sure feels different this year in Toronto.
Carter, Mackenzie Blackwood might be playing for a cup contender and making probably, I assume, more money than you at the moment, but you, in my heart, are still the pride of Thunder Bay. So we appreciate you joining us. Excellent stuff as always.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I was on with Craig last night with Button. I remember history when he tore me apart on NHL Network with you. So me and Craig Button are best buddies now. That's a good YouTube clip to pull up.
We've never talked about that before.
No.
That's never been an off-air conversation.
That clip
here,
is not on YouTube at all.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, Carter. Appreciate it. There you have it. Carter Hutton, who is on SiriusXM Daily Faceoff, and he was with Nashville when the infamous video of Craig Button.
Dude, like if people have not seen this thing, you have to go
epic.
Look at it.
It is. I actually wasn't on air with him. It was Mike Kelly.
Okay.
And I was upstairs. I was going to do the next show that night. And
have you seen this, Dave?
I've seen it, yeah.
Someone came upstairs, the boardroom was just like, Craig just lost it. And we're like, yeah, whatever. Craig gets
It's Craig.
like, no, he just lost it. And to the point where I've heard, he would have to confirm this, David Poyle called Craig the next day to ask if he was okay. Like, not, I'm mad at you for ripping my goaltender. It's like, we're friends, and are you okay? It's
something. I can't remember if it was
we could all have a good laugh.
I can't remember if it was you or someone else that tipped me off to this thing, but
probably was me.
The first time I ever saw it, I'm like, I can't believe this exists online.
Right. And credit to Mike Kelly, who
handled it like a pro.
One of his first shows on the NHL Network.
Was it?
Handled it like a pro.
Wow.
Because it's like you're trying to steer the ship another way, and it's like the tide is taking you back to this.
Oh, man.
Anyways.
I cannot believe he just brought that up too.
I know.
That's one of those things that no one really ever talks about.
Well, you just don't know how they're going to, he might be like, I hate Craig.
Yeah.
He did.
For sure.
And it's 10 years later and I still hate him. And he's obvious. And I'm not surprised given his personality that he's having a good laugh about it. But,
no one bats 1,000.
No, that's true.
No one bats
young
1,000.
Young goaltenders can learn anything. It's stand up. Make
sure you stand up, and if Alex Ovechkin scores on you over your shoulder, it is your fault.
Anyways, don't know how to segue, but we're going to take a break. Today's best bets are coming up, and we'll wrap up the show. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and on TSN2. All right, welcome back to OverDrive on TSN 1050 and the TSN app. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm going with anytime goal scorers, and I'm going with Martin Necas, Matthew Nyes, and Nathan McKinnon at plus 2025. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Play responsibly, 19 plus, and physically located in Ontario. We are under 10 minutes away from the Leafs and Devils. The pregame show, though, began at 6:30 with Hayes, O-Dog, Noodles, and James Duthie. And it sounds like we have a clip. Things are already off the rails. Let's listen in.
Boys, look at us, the OverDrive crew taking over the Leafs on TSN. With Duffy.
Guys, we got to make this about ourselves. We got to make it about OverDrive. Duffy always steals the show. He's always pointing at himself. Bring it back to me. That means he wants to talk more.
Yeah, enough with the quiz, Canada's favorite game show. Ooh.
Yeah, Mystic Mike, I've had the same brown hair for 30 years. It's nonsense.
Where is this guy anyway?
It's ego. He's always late. He's probably having coffee with the higher-ups.
In walls. JD, great seeing you, man. Thanks for having us tonight. We're jacked for the broadcast.
Jimmy, you're the best, buddy. Lead the way. We'll see you at 6:30.
We'll chat then.
That's the angriest I've ever seen James Duffy.
That door doesn't slam well.
No, it doesn't. You know that one. That's the green room just outside of Studio 6. But
things are off to a tumultuous start there.
Yeah, they have a couple hours to win back James Duffy.
Yeah.
He runs that ship. And he could.
That's his show.
It is.
Yeah, that's his show.
So
this was our show today.
It was. We tried to keep it on the rails.
We rented it for 3 hours.
Right. Leafs Devils, just quickly, your thoughts. You feeling good about this or what?
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. Like I kind of think Leafs have been lower event hockey recently. I feel like tonight might have the makings of a little more higher event type game.
Well, that won't please the coach.
That won't please the coach, but it could be entertaining.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I don't think the coach cares if he's entertaining.
No, he couldn't care less.
No, not this one. We've seen coaches that want to entertain.
Yeah.
Craig Berube is not one of them.
No.
And I just did my anytime goal scores, but you said Auston Matthews is going to score.
I did say that?
In one of your ramblings, I think you said like Auston Matthews is scoring tonight. You might have just said it in casual conversation, but I picked up on it.
That's not really like a bold take to say that Matthews.
It's got a 50-50.
Like,
yeah.
He's like most nights he's minus money. Anyways, we'll see.
He's due.
All right. Well, the boys will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. and they'll chat then.